Hello, this is Dr. Flight, and this will be a video lecture on facilitation planning channel strategy. So generally speaking, when we talk about facilitation in this context, it means facilitating or making possible an exchange or an offer opportunity to the marketplace. So what we want to think about as we move into this topic is how we can make the product or service accessible to the target audience or the market that we have in mind. So we may think of this more in a broad sense as channel design or maybe even supply chain management or something along those lines. But at the heart of it, what we want to really focus on is how we can make our product or service available to the market by placing it in front of them and creating opportunities for an intersection between the market and our product. So the more that we can control that environment where the product or service is available to the market, the better access they have to it and the more likely they are to participate in it. So that's in a nutshell what this is going to be about. And so we'll spend a little bit of time talking about, again, facilitation planning, channel design, channel strategy. And we might think of this in the traditional marketing sense as the place P. If you think about the four P's, we think about place and location utility. So, all right. So if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, please enjoy. All right, welcome back. So here's what we want to talk about, this term called facilitation. And it's a bit awkward when we think about this term because it's not something that we use on a regular basis. But facilitation in this context really reflects or means this idea of facilitating or making possible the behavior that we are intending our market to be able to engage in. So we want to think about how our market reacts to our product or our service, what we want them to do, or what behavior we want to change, and then we want to think about how can we best help them do that in creating or facilitating that behavior. In short, when you facilitate a behavior, you're helping somebody complete or engage or act on something that we have in mind for them. So as we move forward, we want to think of this in two different ways, and this facilitation concept. One way would be our activities that help bring about or help contribute to the desired behavior. So there are certain things that we can do to bring our product and service to our market, either physically or within a locational type of a context, and also within a time component as well. So having the product at the market, where they are physically are and when they need it is something that we can control and we can have an impact on. So that's one idea, and that's what we'll talk about today in this one a little bit, in this video a little bit. Another way to think about this though as well is that the context or the environment that the recipient finds themselves often creates its own motivation for the respondent to change or to adopt or adapt or use our product or service. So part of this is us being there when our market needs us. Another aspect of this is us taking advantage of the environment when the market needs us. So we don't so much control that environmental situation where they need it. I mean, it might be not us creating it, but we're certainly taking advantage of the situation or of the environment. If our service is needed and we can provide it, we want to be able to do so. So this facilitation concept happens kind of in two different ways, and we'll talk about both of these over a couple different lecture videos, but we'll focus on the first one today. So in this first one, we think about bringing our product or service to the market. Sometimes we think about this from what we call a channels perspective. So a channel is a passageway, or it's a conduit for bringing together the marketer and the target audience. We want to bring them together in some place at the same time for the purpose of facilitating and creating a behavioral change or behavioral opportunity. So before, when we think about exchanges and marketplaces, that would be the location at the time and the place in which a traditional product would be delivered and sold in a marketplace or an exchange. Well, it's kind of the same idea here, only what we're doing is having some type of other behavioral change that would serve the nonprofit's mission, which ultimately is likely to serve the client's mission as well, and to help them out in some way. So channels then are important concepts in terms of how we bring markets and marketers together. Various channel components exist to help us do this. So we have a lot of resources, if you will, to help us bring a product and a market together. These may include things like physical assets, physical buildings, locations, showrooms, offices, clinics, churches, synagogues, and things of that nature. So physical locations will certainly be a place where these two things can meet. We can provide a service and the market can meet that service. We also, though, include other resources as well: people, volunteers, staff, folks who work on behalf of the organization and reach out to the market. And then we have other organizations too, or outside organizations, who also help facilitate the delivery of the product or service. So things like bus services, internet providers, wholesalers, distributors, government agencies, other organizations that may help use our product or service come into play when we talk about, bringing the product to the market. Now, it's important to remember here a concept in marketing that deals with something called relationship marketing between organizations. So this other or outside organization part is actually really important because companies and organizations and nonprofits rely on outside agencies and outside elements to help them do their job. So for instance, if I'm providing a meal service and I have to get my meal to the clients or to the participants, I have to get it to them somewhere. So I may actually have people, moving the food from where we make it to where the clients are. I might use an agency, another nonprofit. I might use a government organization. There could be a whole host of other folks involved in getting that service delivered, but not all by me. So we have to be able to manage these relationships with other organizations in order to facilitate the use of our product. So sometimes we call this multi-firm marketing, multi-firm channeling of the product. And there are several key benefits that are associated with using multiple organizations or multiple firms to help us in the delivery and facilitation of our product or service. So one would be, the more folks we use that are outside the organization, the greater the availability of the good to potential customers and clients. Also, we're able to tap into other agencies' resources and we can better satisfy the customer. Using other agencies, they are willing to push the product or service or encourage the use of our product or service, onto the market. So that's a good thing. Using multiple partners helps us transfer information. So one of the ways we learn through feedback is what the market likes and dislikes about our product and service. Well, other organizations who are in closer contact with the customer can often provide that type of information. A couple more aspects here, things that are positive benefits from using a multi-firm channel design. and outside agencies is that we're able to specialize, and that allows us to lower our costs. So when firms specialize, they generally become more cost effective and more efficient. Using multiple partners also allows us to be more nimble and flexible. So if we have to, for instance, relocate our service quickly, or maybe adapt to the interests of the public, then that is beneficial. I mean, that's allowed for more. You becomes more flexible in that way. So adaptations to the market then is something that we can capitalize on. Helps us form a competitive advantage when we team up with outside forces or organizations. And then finally, having multiple partners helps us reduce firm and organizational risk. So when we talk about risk, what we're talking about is when we make an investment and there's some probability that that investment will fail to deliver on the mission. So if we introduce a new service, for instance, and we feel like it's going to help support our mission, if we have other partners who are helping us along, then the chance of that failure goes down. And if we were to fail, then it's not just us failing, it's also our partners who are absorbing some of that risk as well. So it's not so much that risk is so much reduced overall, but it's spread out across more firms when we partner with more firms. Okay, so here are 8 really good things to think about and kind of be able to, kind of talk about when we're saying why we should partner and why we should manage relationships with outside firms in order to facilitate and bring to market a product or a service. Now, in nonprofit systems, the whole idea of facilitation may also be nuanced, and this is actually true when we talk about services, especially so. So one concept that we think of when we talk about facilitation is something called a delivery system. So we have in the middle here, we have a depiction of a hospital. Now, think of the different ways a hospital can satisfy its mission. Its mission is probably going to be associated with helping people who are sick, or helping people become healthy, or helping people stay healthy. Something along those lines will probably be the focus of the mission. And so the question is, we have a physical building, but where are our delivery systems, and how can we deliver our services that will help fulfill our mission? Maybe we engage in some type of a transportable service where, we may have for instance, a mammogram bus that travels around and provides health screenings for women. Or we may have some type of a mobile service to collect blood for blood donations. Or we have some type of transportable mobile service that's going to bring vaccinations to pockets of people who have difficulty getting out of their homes. So all of these are examples of a transportable service that fulfills the mission of the hospital or of the medical center, and think of it as a different way we can facilitate or bring to the market our service, which fulfills our mission. A freestanding kiosk. Now, a kiosk is like a small booth. You might see at a mall. In the middle of the aisle in a big mall, you'll see individual little vendors, and these would be kiosks. Imagine if the hospital had a freestanding kiosk. Let's just say it's in a mall and they're able to dispense information, maybe health screenings or something along those lines, at the kiosk. So that gets them away from the hospital building itself. We may have actual satellite locations or emergency clinics where people can come 24 hours a day and have acute care performed, services performed. If there's like an emergency that somebody needs to in their local community, but they don't necessarily want to go to the hospital, there's that. There is the hospital building itself, which of course provides a location and a delivery service, element there. The internet. The internet's an interesting one because through the internet, the hospital can have a presence and they can provide information. You can maybe book an appointment online. You can look at your bill online. You can have a lot of contact with a hospital online, and it can indeed help deliver its service to the public and the recipients. And then finally listed here is something called group practices. So if there's a group of doctors that get together under the umbrella of the hospital, they may run an office building, a medical building, and then that medical building may be, like I say, a portion of the hospital or use the hospital's name. But we have a group of doctors all working together so that they share costs. So there's a cost saving element, but it also provides a nice outreach or opportunity to deliver their services to the public. So in this sense, we have a really good depiction, kind of idea of something called delivery systems. And again, we don't have to think of this as we're a hospital, so we have just a building and this is where we do work. That our job, our purpose is not to have a building. Our purpose is to help people stay healthy. So how can we dispense and deliver these types of services? That's kind of the idea of facilitation and how we're going to create partnerships with others and have different what we call channels to deliver our product or service to the market. One of the ideas, and sometimes we draw pictures that show a kind of a flow of how services get to the customer. One thing we spend a lot of time talking about is like having a direct path to the customer, or maybe having some intermediaries like wholesalers and retailers and things like that. Another way to consider this whole flow chart, if you will, of service and facilitation is to think of what the customer needs and specifically identifying who will provide those benefits to the customer. And so this is another way we can think of making the facilitation process work. So what we're going to look at just in brief here is something called a hybrid channel design. And we're going to start again with a medical center, kind of like our hospital before. And we've got a bunch of customers down below, but in between the customer and the medical center, we have an emergency clinic or a set of clinics that represent the hospital, but maybe located in different areas of the community. So if you've got a cold and you don't want to go to the hospital, but you want to see somebody right away, you may go to a neighborhood clinic, which is depicted here in the green colored boxes. And there's some management that happens, among those clinic locations. And you can think of these locations as providing the actual like doctor, patient, nurse, patient visit experience. So the diagnosis happens here, maybe some x-raying happens here, some prescriptions are written at least here, and things of that nature. Now, up to this point, that's what the clinic does. After this, though, there are other elements that need to be provided that the clinic may not do, but we still need to facilitate and have happen on behalf of the customer. So transportation. It may be the case that not everybody has easy access to transportation. So we work with a bus company or a local cab company or local companies that can help transport customers to and from the marketplace. A prescription or medical or medicine like pharmacy should also be available. So maybe we work directly with a pharmaceutical pharmacy, a local pharmacy to help work with us in getting the customers their medicines. We have another element or office that deals with follow-up and support. So after you've been to the clinic, you have like a few days and they want to follow up and they want to see another appointment with you, or they want you to go see a specialist. Well, that's a follow-up service and support. We want to manage that. Also, there's a lot of back-end work. So for instance, if you have a client who has had the same recurring illness, we want to keep a medical record of all that. And those medical records have to be held on to and managed. for various reasons. And of course, we have things like billing as well and access to insurance and things of that nature. So in this like brief example, what we're looking at is a fairly complicated network of organizations that may all be independent of each other. So for instance, the folks who are doing the billing are not probably the folks who are doing transportation, and the people at the pharmacy who are doing the meds are not the same people who are at the clinic actually diagnosis illnesses. And so there's an independence here, but at the same time, the medical center, who is probably the champion at this point, they're probably arranging all of these things to happen and exerting some type of, as a channel captain, as the leader here is probably controlling or trying to manage everybody so that the customer experience is positive. And as a marketer, that's what we need to do. As a marketer, we're really, really, really concerned with the customer's impression of the product and the brand. And so just imagine, so for instance, we have a really good clinic experience. So the customer really likes the clinic experience, but maybe the billing is all messed up. So the billing gets all screwed up, or the people who deal with billing are always not very friendly and not very helpful. Well, that experience in billing is going to really impact the overall feeling they have with the clinic and ultimately the medical center. So we have to exert a fairly strong amount of control over the marketplace. So one of the elements that we talk about here is something that we call channel power, channel behavior conflict, and how we manage that. So just real briefly, there are 5 different ways that we think we can express something called channel power. One way would be something called coercive power. And coercive power involves threatening other members of your channel, other partners, and kind of threatening them with something bad, like we're going to kick you out or we're not going to do business with you unless you behave differently. So when you threaten a channel member, you're exerting something called coercive power in order to try to get that in this case the billing agency or the billing office to behave in a better way. Another type of reward or power is something called reward power, though, and it happens when a firm can't bypass a channel. Even though there may be conflict, they choose to stay with the channel partner because there's a reward to it, because it makes sense to. So maybe in our little scenario we talked about before, maybe the medical center is limited in who can provide billing services. And even though they don't want to use this billing company, maybe they do because that billing company is the only ones who can do it. Or maybe there's some positive benefit that we're receiving. Maybe this billing company is really, really inexpensive. And even though they don't do a great job, we need an inexpensive billing company for us to be able to make cost or something like that. So in other words, there's a reward, and the reward is strong enough for us to stay in a relationship. And that would demonstrate some type of power that that company had over us because the reward they offer is that much better. Okay, 3 others here, and then we'll wrap this up. Something called expert power. When there's somebody who you do a partnership with who has some unique or key expertise in part of the process. So maybe it's a case where maybe it's a case where we have access to some physicians or doctors who have very, very special techniques, and they're an expert in those techniques. And even though maybe I don't know, for whatever, maybe they cost a lot of money, maybe they're really expensive, but they're worth having because they're experts and they make the channel better because of it. They make our overall product better. Referent power And then finally, legitimate power are the last two. Referent power is one where we have a channel member that is well known or respected. I like to think of them as ones who are like a real strong brand. So in our medical example, let's say that we had a partnership with a well-known with a well-known like medical device company. So like Boston Braces is a company, for instance, that makes plastic braces for like the body suits, and like so if you have a spinal injury and you need your back braced, the Boston Brace Company could put that, they're experts, they're the key, they're the best. So if I'm a medical provider and I want to provide the best back braces, I would go with Boston because I know they're the best. And that's just a company to company relationship thing. But the referent power is referring to Boston in this case because their ability to provide a great product is well known. The final element here is something called legitimate power, and this is when we have a contract specifically with another agency and we use the legal aspects of the contract to get them to do what we want them to do. So that's when you have legitimate power. You have a contract that you will enforce. Okay, so as we move forward, we briefly describe this idea of facilitation, what facilitation is, and how we talk about we want to facilitate the user, the market, to be able to access our product. We talked about marketing channels and specifically 8 different benefits that are associated with this different element with having partners. And then there are all these other kind of little mini topics that we could talk about within the role of facilitating the channel design. And while we didn't go into a lot of detail of each of these, we know that we want to design the channel, and we talked a little bit about a hybrid channel. And when we talk about the design of a channel like a hybrid channel, we talk about the number of different people who are associated with it. In our example, we had a billing agency, a transportation agency, a pharmacy, we had the clinics, and we can have other actors as well, but that really talks about how big our channel is going to be, how many partners we're going to have with it, and what specifically they will do. So an allocation of functions. So who will do what within the actual channel design that we design. Other things we can think about go together, like recruiting, bringing in new channel members, and then ultimately controlling and managing the channel. And sometimes we have to exert power. And there are 5 different types of power that we can think about as channel captains, but we need to bring in new partners. We need to manage and control the partners that we have in order to facilitate get the product into the hands of the customer, and make that connection possible for them. Okay, so there's a lot of material then we can talk about when we talk about channels, channel design, and so this literally scratches the surface when we talk about channels, but we really want to think of them in the context of facilitation and making our products and services available to the customer in the most easy way for them. Okay, so reach out to me if you have any questions, and thank you for listening. Have a great day. Thanks.